Pleased to have with me here today one of Youngstown's finest, retired Youngstown firefighter Jesse L. Carter Sr. Mr. Carter, what inspired you to become a firefighter?
Well, it was sort of happenstance in that I had not chosen it as a career, but after returning from the military, and I took the exam a couple of times there, and then when my name came up for appointment, I was appointed to the department in the year 1960.
All right, I see. I have another question I'd like to ask you since we have you here, sir. I'm so glad to have you. Mr. Carter, did you know when you were hired that you were the first African-American firefighter in the city of Youngstown?
Oh, yes, there was no question about that, yes.
Okay. Do you remember, Mr. Carter, your hire date and what it was like that day when you were hired?
Oh, yes, yes. I was hired June the 20th, 1960. And on that first day, I was sort of involved in that. I received some telephone calls once we were at the station. I received a telephone call from one of the captains, and I did not know him, but I had worked with his brother down at the Republic Steel Corporation where I worked at, and he wished me the best, and et cetera, and et cetera. Then in addition to that, I received a verbal visit from an African-American firefighter in Warren, Ohio. His name was Robert Safford. Safford, I should say. He came down and wished me well also. So it was a very involved day, my first day on the job.
Okay. Mr. Carter, when you started your career, did you face any forms of resistance at all, if any?
Well, I would not call it resistance in the fact that you look at resistance, someone wanting to keep you out and keep it, and et cetera. That was not the case. But I did have some contentious moments. But I think I was very fortunate in that on the Youngstown Fire Department at that time, there was about 3 fellows that I graduated from high school with. And my relationship with them was very good in school. Therefore, on the job, it made it somewhat easy. Now, this is not to say that I did not have some moments in which I had to navigate through, but thank God we were able to get through them.
Okay, what were some of the roles you played within the Youngstown Fire Department through the years?
Well, I had several. I was fortunate to work in several positions. Number one, my first year and a half on the job was not firefighting, but I worked on the City of Youngstown's ambulance, which was stationed in the Youngstown Fire Department and ran by the fire department, staffed by the fire department, I should say. Following that, 1967, I took the exam and I was appointed to the position of engineer. Now that position is now called lieutenant. And then the year 1969, I was also appointed to a position of the fire chief's secretary, which I held until the day I retired. Now, in addition to that, I was able to do a little bit of instructing. When I say instructing, I'm talking about participating in instructing the new firefighters coming on, and et cetera, and et cetera.
All right, very interesting. So you had a lot of diversity in your 33 years, I believe, that you served on the Youngstown Fire Department.
Yes,
a lot of diversity, we should say.
And during my during the position that I held as the fire chief's secretary, I was able to attend seminars. Also, I was able to participate in interviews of new firefighters coming on, and And it was very, 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 very rewarding.
When you started working with the fire department, you remember what your starting wage was back then?
Oh, yes. $5,300 a year.
Wow. I'm trying to imagine what that would have been in a bi-weekly check or whatever.
Oh, boy.
Wow. Well, things were so much cheaper back then, as we know. What were some of, what did you guys do between emergency response calls?
Yes, we just did not sit down and watch TV. Those of us who took our job pretty serious and wanted to advance ourselves, we were doing many things. Number one, a firefighter had to know where he had to go in a case of an emergency. So therefore, you had to study the district, study your district, that is the streets, the number sequence on your street, where they were, while you were doing that. And in order to do that, you had to study, because if you were assigned to one district tomorrow, you had to understand where that district was. Also, if you had to go to another district, you had to know where you were going, especially if you were an engineer or a lieutenant, see.
Okay. Mr. Carter, what determined how many trucks would be at each fire station? How did they do that?
Well, that was done by the higher-ups in that they took the population of the city, the density of the population, and also the area in which it was covered. Now, once a truck was assigned to a particular area, you had so many men per truck. Thereby, if you had a multiple alarm fire, then you could move trucks around, thereby knowing to put more personnel at the scene of a fire. But there was no set way of doing it. You had to go by your population.
Yeah, I understand. It seemed like they looked at the demographics, they looked at the population,
yes,
and they put the fire trucks where the areas of most need were
yes,
strategically. So they had these determined spots. I understand. Okay, well, what year did you see women enter into the field? You remember when women came in?
This was something that I cherish today. This was around 1982 when the first female was appointed to the Youngstown Fire Department. And it was a double first. Now, what I mean by a double first, first it was female, then it was also an African-American female. So therefore, it was a double first.
Wow. So, I can understand. You kind of almost reflected back to when you started
yes,
being the first
exactly
African-American
right,
male.
exactly right.
And fast forward 22 years, you got to see women enter into the field. What was one of the worst emergency responses you went on during your career? You have any memory?
Yes, I was working the ambulance. This was probably, I was on about a year and a half, and we got a call out to the Sharon Line district, and it would just so happen that the firefighters were out there trying to put a blaze out, and they could not get at least 4 youngsters out of the house out there. And as being on the ambulance, we watched it. We just could not bring in them. We just could not revive any of the kids. So that was the worst thing. That was the worst.
Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, Mr. Carter. What was one of the most rewarding parts of your career? Any particular events during those 33 years really stand out from the other?
Yes. Number one, overall, I think I would say that I gained some friends, the friendships, the people I met, not only here in Youngstown, but in the traveling in and for the department, in traveling to seminars outside of the city, made some contacts and made some met some people in which I correspond with today, and those were the rewarding things. But
Wow.
then, in addition to that, I have to look at it from a standpoint of I was very fortunate to get in and get out without getting hurt, so that I definitely thankful for.
Wow, you're a blessed man then.
Oh yes.
I understand firefighting, being a layman and standing on the sidelines is a very, very dangerous occupation. A lot of your colleagues, you probably seen it, probably didn't make it out, and your career cascaded over 3 decades and into even a third year to 33
Yes.
years. I'm sure you've seen a lot of mishaps and losses within the department as a whole.
Oh yes.
You have any memories of any particular co-workers or anybody that you remembered, any instance where somebody, maybe, just bring to mind. Can you bring to mind anything there that?
Yeah, so when I was appointed to the Fire Chief Secretary position, I worked for a chief by the name of George Pano, and he was the first chief that I worked for, and the first chief that worked for me. I should say worked for me, but it was a learning experience for both of us. And by that being said, I have a nice relationship with him from then up until now. So it's been a great. Now that is not only, but there's some of the fire chiefs I must have worked for, probably all told maybe about 8 fire chiefs during my tenure and working for the fire department, and 1 or 2 stand out a little bit more than others, but by and large, I had no problem with any of the fire chiefs, simply because I was there to do a job, and they were there to do a job, and we did our jobs, and therefore everybody went home happy.
Wow. Mr. Carter, in closing, what are some of your final thoughts about your career and any reflections that you may have?
Well, my career, naturally, as I stated earlier, I had not planned on being a firefighter, but as the circumstances happened, I was able to get in, and in so doing, I took with me this attitude. Once I was appointed, I know that I was a public servant, per se. And being a public servant, I felt that I had to conduct myself in a manner in which I would not bring shame not only on myself, but also on the public in which I work for. And the rewarding part about that is that I think, as right now, the public appreciated the services that I performed. That, to me, is greatly, it's great, and I am gratified for it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Carter, I thank you for sharing your memories about your career and allowing me to spend time with you today. Thank you so much, Mr. Carter.
It's been an honor.
Well, Mr. Carter, we have a number of memorabilia and artifacts that I see on the table here. Wow, a lot. Starting from the right-hand side of the table there, I'm looking at a City of Youngstown proclamation. Do you remember what mayor gave that proclamation
Yes,
to you?
this here was presented to me by Mayor Patrick Ungaro. This one here. And of course, this is a photo of myself beside one of the fire trucks.
Okay.
This here is a collage of pictures of the department at the time it was taken, and that was in 1971. At that time, we had approximately 250 firefighters in the city of Youngstown. And of course, today, that number has shrunken down considerably. Okay, this here is a citation from the House of Representatives. And this was instituted and presided to me through the efforts of Representative Robert F. Hagan. He was of House District 53. This one here is from the International Association of Firefighters.
You remember what year they gave that to you, Mr.
1987.
That was 87?
Yes,
Wow.
and this one here was from a friend of mine, Representative James Traffican, a representative of the 17th District in Ohio.
Okay.
And this one over here from the city of Youngstown, it was a resolution from and at that time the mayor was Patrick Ungaro.
Oh, wow. I remember his tenure as mayor of Youngstown. That was back during the 80s.
Yes,
He had a long tenure here as one of our mayors.
Yep.
I see the date on there is June of 1987.
Yes. And this one here is just a printed copy of from the House of Representatives through the efforts of Honorable James Traffican. And now this one here I cherish very, very highly. And this is from the Marcus Garvey Association of Youngstown.
Wow.
That was an organization that my dad belonged to when in his younger years, and they were able to do that for me. And over here, this is a Trailblazer Award from the VFW Post 6488 and its auxiliaries. And this was the year January 24th, the year 2009.
Oh, wow.
And this one here is a citation from the Youngstown Association of Black Professional Firefighters. It was their Trailblazer Award, this one here.
Okay.
And of course, that's a dress cap for the position. Now this is just, there's some other ones that I just couldn't put together. There's a number of them from the various little organizations that I belong to, and in my Masonic endeavors, and that's number one. Also from the church groups and so on and so forth. They were very, very, very generous, and I appreciate your offer.